Thank you for joining me. I've been delighted today to play host to Dr Anne Dickson, author of Women at Work, Strategies for Survival and Success. This has been a very useful resource for me as a professional coach mentor to better support women in the workplace, both corporations, in the public sector, and also women running their own businesses. It recognises and delves into the sorts of challenges and issues that women face in the workforce, and is also author of the best-selling A Woman in Your Own Right, which has sold over 650,000 copies worldwide. She's a great friend, great supporter, and I've been delighted to host her here at Holly House today. Now, the sorts of things we've been talking about in this mini-series is the sorts of things that women come to me with. The sorts of questions they ask are, how can I feel and act more confidently? How can I have more influence and impact? How can I say no positively or constructively? How do I deal with disappointment? How do I deal with possibly being labelled bossy and aggressive if I want to just up my game a little bit in terms of my career prospects? So we've been looking into those, and I hope you enjoy this mini-series and find it of use, whether you're a coach or a mentor supporting women in the workplace, or you're a woman yourself wanting to be more successful in your career. Thank you very much for joining us. Give me some feedback, let me know what you think. Thank you. Thanks for joining me today. It's lovely to see you again. I wonder if we could just explore some of your views on the sorts of challenges that are still facing women in the workplace.
Well, you've got to remember that the workplace is a microcosm of the culture in general, and so given the realistic lack of equality, you're going to get that reflected in the workplace. I think it's also become, the workplace has become more competitive for everybody, and so women themselves face a particular challenge. They face being unequal, often feeling they've got to be attractive, both in terms of appearance and behaviour. Traditionally, they find it hard to say no in many situations. It's hard to give up our need to be liked. And settle for being respected. And I think that's a very much what I find with women at work rather than men at work. You know, there's a difficulty of separating that, and we therefore find it hard to be straightforward and clear in our authority to ask people to do things without wheedling round, without trying to still make sure they approve of us. You know, we find it, really do find it hard.
And is that, can I just ask you, do you think that's also linked to the idea that our appearance is perhaps more important and maybe we need to be looking sort of more girly than perhaps professional in our working lives? Is that
I don't know whether it's to do with more girly, but I do think there still is a pressure for women more than men on their appearance. I mean, you've got the whole thing with newscasters. You know, the men are okay, but the women aren't as they get to a certain age. So I mean, that's just one example in the news, but I think that happens all the time. And women do feel an extra pressure, I think, and it's not necessarily wanting to be attractive in a sort of sexual sense, but there is just it's almost as if the pressure on women, I still think, is to be, you know, they have to work harder often than their counterparts. They're trying to make a better impression. They still often, when the truth comes out, they still often feel that they're behind in the race. And when you're behind in the race, you feel you've got to put in more effort and hide more and deny more and be more pleasing and, you know, make sure you fit in instead sometimes of just coming out with the ideas you have, saying what you see if you disagree with it, confronting people, challenging people. And because of that, I think a lot of women are not used in that way. I mean, a lot of women's potential as employees is completely wasted.
And I think that's really important, because at the moment there's a big issue about talent management. So how do you spot, develop and retain talent? And I think, you know, there's a real kind of challenge to do this with the female labour force, which is growing. There are more women coming into the workplace. The market for goods and services to women is growing hugely. So I think there's a real business case around this talent management. But it sounds to me, you know, as if there's an opportunity for women to be successful, but sometimes when they get to the top, they can actually, I think you said the words, they can be kind of, you know, really bitchy and really tough. And I sometimes think that, is that because they think they need to be like men in order to get to the top? And if that's the case, does that mean that they kind of cut themselves off from the community of women below them coming up through the ranks? I mean, there's two or three things going on there. And I just wondered, you know, how women can be authentically women with all the kind of characteristics that I think make us who we are, but also still to be successful.
I think it's difficult not to be too simplistic because, you know, we can't get into thinking, well, all women are this or all men are that.
I agree.
However, one of the ways in which women are valued at work is their ability to relate to others, to connect more easily to people's feelings, to be more sensitive, to be more aware of dynamics with people. And so let's say that, you know, many women have this ability. And now, if you're in a culture where that is marginalised and devalued completely, then that never comes out. And therefore, if there's not the opportunity, then women are not going to display those very qualities, that they're very strengths that could be of use. Right? The second thing is that, you know, some women, I think, by nature are just more ruthless and aggressive and competitive. They're happy with that. They're happier, you know, with those kind of values, you know, and so they would compete more easily in that environment and be happy to do so. So they wouldn't necessarily feel any split between who they were, you know. Now, they would be unlikely often to kind of reach to the, you know, reach down and help anyone else. But that's, you know, that's who they are. So I think there are two different things.
But I don't know. I guess it's really important for senior women. I think that's maybe, you know, one of the things that we can say, that if senior women can find ways of supporting the community of women in the workplace below them, and perhaps sharing their experiences, supporting, maybe mentoring, finding ways to, you know, just give a helping hand to other women, but in a way that allows women to be authentically themselves and bring those very special qualities to the workplace. Would you agree?
I would, but I think there are two levels to supporting women, and one thing is a sort of promotional aspect, but I think, you know, you talk about senior women helping, unless these women as individuals acknowledge their own vulnerability. A lot of women are in complete denial about the culture. For good reason. You have to hide. You know, you do often have to hide what you feel. Or what you'd prefer to do, because you want to keep your job, or you want to get on. Now, if you don't, it's one thing to deny it, it's another thing to acknowledge it and know what you're up against, and then, you know, make different strategies around that, because then you're still not losing your own integrity. Now, if there are women like that who know very well what they have been up against, how they've dealt with it, then as mentors, if it is what I think that was the word you used, you know, to younger women, that would be hugely effective. All right, and also that would inspire the junior women to do it, because you're not going to inspire. It's one thing to talk about, you know, technical help and official mentoring, but actually, there's a great difference between teaching something and actually inspiring people, and inspiration only comes when you know that that person knows what it's like, and yet that person has managed to do this with it. If it's too separate, if you just look at this person there, you don't identify.
Absolutely.
All right? You can think, gosh, that's interesting, and that's an interesting skill, and I must remember that. But it doesn't get to you in the same way as somebody who's come from the same base as you, knows how hard it is, and then that's inspiring, and that's real mentoring and encouragement.
Thanks, Anne.
Okay.
That was wonderful. Anne's book, Women at Work, Strategies for Survival and Success, available on Amazon, along with her other works. Thank you very much indeed, Anne, for coming along today. It's lovely seeing you again.